A question I get asked on almost a daily basis is, Nicole, why are my prescriptions so expensive? They started out okay, reasonably priced at the beginning of the year, but as the year has gone on, they've gotten more expensive. And the purpose of this video is to discuss this concept known as the coverage gap or the donut hole on these Medicare Part D prescription drug plans. So, no matter how you receive your Part D prescription drug coverage, whether it's a standalone prescription drug plan with a supplement plan, or you get your Part D drug coverage built into your Medicare Advantage plan, this concept of the coverage gap or donut hole applies to you. And what this means is that there are stages and limits to your prescription drug coverage for a calendar year, for January through December. The first stage of prescription drug coverage is your deductible stage. If your plan has a deductible, you have to meet that first. If your plan does not have a deductible, or if your prescriptions are not subject to the deductible, then you move into the initial coverage stage. And at that stage is when you're just going to the pharmacy, you're getting your prescriptions filled, and you're paying co-payments based upon those prescriptions. But while you're doing that, the insurance company is keeping track of the full cost of your drugs because you have a limit. And the limit for 2024 is $5,080 worth of prescription drug coverage. And again, the way they calculate that is based off of the full cost of your drugs. So let's say you have a prescription that's a $100 drug. You may pay a $10 copayment for it, and the insurance pays the other $90. But it's the full $100 that comes out of your $5,080 limit. And you just pull from that monthly as you get your prescription drugs filled. For most people, 90% of Americans, that initial coverage limit, that amount is enough to cover your prescriptions for the full year. But if you do have some more expensive prescriptions, let's say you have a $500 prescription, you may pay a $47 copayment for that, but it's the full $500 that comes out of your $5,080 that you have for the year. And if you use $500 worth of prescription drug costs every month, then you're going to run out of your initial coverage limit in about 10 months. If you run out of your initial coverage limit, then you move into what's called the coverage gap, otherwise known as the donut hole. And at that point, you are responsible for 25% of the cost of your drugs. So if you have a $500 drug, you're now going to be responsible for $125 of that while you're in the coverage gap or the donut hole. You stay in the coverage gap or the donut hole until your true out-of-pocket cost reaches $8,000. Now, if you have some brand name drugs, which are usually tier 3, tier 4, and tier 5 drugs on the formularies, if you have brand name drugs and you're in the coverage gap, they will give you credit towards your true out-of-pocket cost as if you paid the full 100% of the cost of the drug. So in my example, if you have a $500 drug and you're paying $125 to get that prescription filled, they're going to apply the full $500 towards your $8,000 true out-of-pocket for the year. If you were to reach the true out-of-pocket, the $8,000, then you move into the final stage of prescription drug coverage, and that's called catastrophic coverage. And in catastrophic coverage, it's getting better for 2024. You no longer have any co-payments or co-insurances at all for your prescriptions in catastrophic coverage. You now pay nothing for prescriptions if you reach catastrophic coverage. So the real world examples of this is that most people, 90% of Americans, are going to stay within that initial coverage limit. And then if you are somebody that has some more expensive prescriptions, if you hit the coverage gap or the donut hole, it's usually towards the end of the year. September, October, November timeframe. And you're not usually in it long enough to reach catastrophic coverage because it starts over again the following January. But if you do have several high cost dollar prescription drugs, it could be a situation where maybe you run out of your initial coverage limit in May, for example. You're in the coverage gap until, let's call it August. And then for the rest of the year, you'll no longer have any more costs for your prescriptions because you'll then be in catastrophic coverage. If you're concerned about the costs of your prescriptions, the full costs of the drugs, I have the ability to run your prescription drug list for you. And I can let you know if you're at risk of running into the coverage gap or donut hole and when, and about how much you'll have to pay once you're in there. That way you at least know to prepare for it and you're not surprised when you show up to the pharmacy and they start asking for significantly more money. I do know this is kind of a confusing concept. If you have any questions, let me know. The good news is due to recent legislation, this coverage gap or donut hole is supposed to go away in 2025. So we only have one more year, that 2024, that we need to get through with these limits to prescription drug coverage. Let me know if you have any questions. Thanks.